about the differences that you've seen in the expanding role of the compensation committee.
If you think about environmental, social, and governance items, ESG, the social has been a very big, a big topic in last year in 2020 and now this year in 2021. And that falls primarily on the shoulders of what has historically been the compensation committee. So first of all, one of the things we observe is that compensation committees are changing their names to reflect their broader platforms or broader charters. And they're becoming compensation and talent management committees. They're becoming organizational and comp committees, and the list goes on. Maybe I'll refer to it as the HR committee just for shorthand. But it's intended, the new names are intended really to reflect a much broader charter. Not only is the committee charter and name changing, but that means the way in which they do the work has to change. So we see them addressing new agendas they have new agendas for their meetings. They have new annual planning calendars so that these items are brought onto the calendar in a very disciplined way. They probably have new resources in the room. People who, for example, might head up diversity and inclusion in the company. The leaders of those areas may actually be invited to the committee meeting these days. The education of the committee may change. So what we're seeing here is very sweeping process changes that complement what it is they have to do from a content perspective.
One of the aspects that has really come, to the forefront this year is one that you mentioned, and that is the importance of the role of the corporation in ensuring that employees have equal opportunities.
That is a very timely topic today. And what's interesting is the language even there has changed. It used to be diversity, and then it was diversity and inclusion, and now it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's a very broad topic these days that HR committees and companies are addressing themselves to. What's interesting about that is that each of those pieces is really quite different. So diversity is really a question of what ethnicities, what genders, age ranges, those kind of things you have in the company so that you have, diverse opinions and you're giving everybody an equal opportunity. But it's really about how diverse are you from more of a statistical perspective almost. Equity is really about the pay and the treatment of the people. So based on, are there any biases in the way in which you pay people from any perspective? Are there any biases in the way you promote people, in the performance ratings, and just how you treat people in general? So these kind of things are what we mean by equity. And then the last thing, inclusion, is how people feel about being in the organization. Do they feel a sense of belonging? Do they feel valued? Do they feel heard? And that's very much of a cultural element. So each one of those things means something different, and taken together, it's really a very broad charter that somebody who heads up diversity, equity, and inclusion has. And also it's a broad oversight responsibility on the part of the board in that regard. So once we have kind of the definitions cleared up, I think it's really interesting to think about, okay, what does that mean? Because once we kind of measure statistically where we are we treating people the same or differently, those kind of things? Do we have a gap? We then identified maybe what the issue is there, but there are so many layers that one has to drill down to find the root causes of how did that gap occur. And so what companies are addressing themselves to now is identifying the root causes of how those gaps happen. And that's where it gets tricky, and it's a very intricate process because there could be a lot of them.